And this is our weekly sub-series called Sustainable Short Takes with me, JJWalsh, here in Hiroshima, Japan, and
I'm not sure who you're pointing at yet, but I'm Tove Kinoka. Usually I'm in Yokohama, just outside Tokyo. Today I'm coming to you live from central Tokyo, from Gaenmai.
And yeah, hi, this is this is Shirley, and I've been working with Towa and JJ for our next event, and it's gonna be great. Hopefully in May, and we also have a preview in March, so please look out for that. Thank you.
so Shirley just hinted at something I wrote in the notes here. We are postponing, not canceling our big event from March 21st. We're going to do an online event with some of the great speakers on that day, March 21st, from 9 to 11, probably. And then in May, we're thinking the 14th or 15th, we're going to have the all day event on the Saturday or Sunday. So more information coming soon. Thank you so much, guys, for your patience. It is just not going to work to go ahead for March. Tova has been working really hard to find a venue, and it just wasn't coming together. This actually, I think it's going to work out better. It's going to give us more time to get the word out and to get people there. And hopefully we'll all be boosted by then.
Yes, yeah, much better timing, I think. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. Let's start with kind of a controversial, but should not be controversial topic. Tova, you pointed out Sibylla Patrizia and her documentary film, A Bloody Taboo. Now, Sylvia and her colleague also made Plastic Love, the documentary, which is going to come out sometime this year. And I had the chance to talk to Sibylla in the beginning of this talk a little bit about this amazing documentary. Do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, so I came across this on a friend's Facebook post last week. I think Robin Lewis from Social Innovation Japan posted that. And it was a really interesting sort of short film looking at, particularly in Japan, why is it such a taboo to talk about periods, menstruation? You know, this is something that 50% of the population globally goes through. It's not something we choose to do. It's something that's natural and happens. So why is there this taboo about it? And the film speaks to people in Japan of all generations. So it's talking to sort of younger people who are just starting on their menstruation journey. It talks to older generations, that's their grandparents, talking about how it was before the age of having easily available menstruation products, so they had to use cloths, and then those had to be washed in the communal washing areas, and so it was all very, they had to wait until nobody was around to go and wash them, and try and hide it all the time. They were told it was something that they shouldn't let the men see, keep it secret, it's dirty. And the younger people they interviewed were talking about the fact that in sex education classes at schools, still in Japan, the girls and the boys are separated. So boys never even hear about periods really and what's going on. And so they have no understanding, which perpetuates the stigma and the feeling that this is something that we shouldn't be talking about. Which is crazy. So it was a very interesting film. It was great to hear different generational perspectives. Another topic they brought up was the tampon tax, as we call it in the UK, and sort of again in Japan, the menstruation products are taxed. Why are women having to pay extra out of our own pockets for this? Medicine is subsidized, or or any other kind of health related products are. This is not something that we can avoid. We have to use these things. So why are we being charged so much for that? That was a really interesting topic to bring up, and something I would really like schools and local governments and national government to be talking more about, and looking at how we can make this more normal to talk about it, remove that stigma, and also reduce the financial burden on women for this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shirley, you had an interesting example from India, a film that became popular.
Yep. So there was this film that came out, which was called Padman. So this was more about rural India, where, women even now use rags or leaves or a piece of cloth, like Toa said,
Mhm.
because sanitary napkins are so rare and it's almost too expensive to buy. So there was this story about a man who got married to a woman, because in like traditional marriages, men are not even aware of this thing or that exists, in like you female bodily function. So once he got married to her, and then once she came inside the family, he realized that every month, like 2 or 3 days, she was banished from the family and she couldn't do household chores, she couldn't participate. And he loved her so much that he couldn't see that happening, and he was so shocked. So, and just seeing that she had to use leaves or rags to like for basic function which should be provided easily, so he tried to use like a different kinds of materials, because just buying a normal pad from the store was way too expensive. In the beginning he started buying those for his wife, but then they had to cut costs on milk or basic products, just so that he could provide that to her, and she did not like that. So he then went on a mission to try to make affordable sanitary pads, and because like no woman was ready to experiment for him because of the taboo and such like crazy, you know things happening around the village and not accepting this as a normal thing, he just tried different pads, and he kind of used like goat's milk to emulate what it feels like. And even though the whole village was against him, he went on to make this very innovative product, which he then went on to like present all over India. So that's something that is super duper like inspiring, I would say, especially coming
Yeah.
from a man.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I
yeah.
think we have to include men in the conversation, right? And
Yep.
like when my daughter started menstruating, I bought her these reusable pads made in Japan. They're cute. She got used to rinsing them out, and we put them in the laundry. Same like any other dirty clothes. My husband see this happening. My son, when he got his first girlfriend, said, "How can I support my girlfriend while she's menstruating?"
Oh,
And I thought, yeah, we should have this conversation with everybody because it's such a normal part of society,
yeah.
right? There's definitely, like we were saying before we started, there's effects on people, planet, and profit. If girls have to stay home from school because they're menstruating, that affects our economy and education. People stay home from work because they're menstruating, like it really has that people, planet, profit aspects to it. How we find more sustainable types of tampons or pads that we could
Mhm.
reuse, right? The cup, there's a lot of innovation there, and it should be funded or at least subsidized by the government. This is not something people are choosing to
Right.
have, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you.
Let's switch gears to AI. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. I was thinking about, can we have a sustainable AI future? I drive a electric car, Tesla, and one of the games on the Tesla is backgammon. And I was playing the easiest level, and it's too easy. It's like making obvious mistakes. But then if you choose the medium level or the hard level, it's impossible to win. And a lot of the roles that I was doing, but the computer was doing, they wouldn't even show it to me. They would just be like, just assume that you got a role that you couldn't move. So it's just playing by itself. And it really got me thinking, not just about this game, but it got me thinking about our future depending on computers that learn. and
Hmm.
AI. And if we are so dependent on resource management, energy, uh, infrastructure, like all these things that we use computers for now, if we're dependent on AI, it depends how they're programmed in terms of how fair it's going to be for us. So, can we have a sustainable future with AI? So, I was just kind of thinking about this a bit. Any thoughts, Tova, Shirley?
Shelley, do you want to go first on this one? You're probably
Oh,
more
sure.
knowledgeable on me, I think, than me on this.
I mean, this is a topic which is very close to my heart. I studied artificial intelligence and machine learning in university for 5 years ago, and yeah, it was very interesting. It was one of the most interesting subjects that we touched upon, and I would really like to talk about, like, in a really short period of time, about the project that we did for AI and sustainability. So so we worked for kind of like the smart city project for the government of India, and it was like a hackathon, and we came up, like, five of us as a group, we came up with an idea for using AI and Internet of Things for sustainable garbage management, because garbage management is kind of like a big issue in India because the population is so huge. It's like 1.3 billion,
Hmm.
I think, right now. I might be wrong, but so yeah, what we came up with is that there were so many, like, garbage bins all around the city, but we do not have enough resources for this truck to go to every garbage bin every single day and collect it. So there was, like, overflowing every day, which causes a health hazard, biohazard. So what we did is just using a very cost effective ultrasonic sensor on these garbage bins, which tracks the amount of garbage, because sometimes if there are like 10 apartment buildings in the same area, there's like more garbage, right? But if it's like a more rural area with just like five houses in a 1 kilometer vicinity, it doesn't need to be, taken out every day. So using those ultrasonic sensors on those garbage bins, we just had like a graph that showed the amount of garbage in that particular bin. So it automatically gave you like the area that you should target, and like, these bins require your attention right now, it's 90% and above, so go there and finish that, and if you have time, then you go to this route. So it also
Hmm.
made like a route for you in. And we also included like citizen participation. Like, if any kind of if any person sees, like, okay, there is some garbage on the road which is unsanitary, or if they see like potholes or stuff like that, they can just report it. And we use geolocation from the photo to realize where that picture is taken from, and we can, address that issue ASAP. So that was something that was highly appreciated and we enjoyed a lot. So, things like that, if we can do in Japan as well, that would be amazing, I think.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Definitely. That reminds me of I listened to a podcast, the Ocean Impact Organization, and one of the organizations that they were talking about is doing a Seabin project. So it's an Australian company, and they created this kind of, it looks like a trash can in the water, and it just kind of, with the flow of the water, naturally collects
Mhm.
garbage and lets fish go through, so it doesn't catch fish by accident. It's a very simple project, but it's very effective. You have to have staff that keep emptying it because it fills up fast. But one of the technologies they were using recently is to have kind of a code reader and to track, because all of these products, especially if it's a product like a pet bottle, it
Hmm.
has a barcode.
Of
So
course.
it started automatically tracking what companies' products were coming into the seabed, and then collecting all of that data into a database which was accessible to the public and can be accessed around the world. So in this way, that's definitely an idea for a more sustainable future. holding businesses accountable, having that transparency and accountability as a way that we're programming our computers to help us deal with environmental problems. So that was really exciting to see.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I think, both examples that we've talked about, both, Shirley's example in the cities and, that ocean one as well, show us that there is huge potential for this. I think the flip side of that is, if we're talking about, back to your original example, Joy, of in your car playing against, the AI in a game where you can't win and it's learning and getting more cleverer and cleverer as it goes on. What are the risks associated with that, and who's programming this, and are there biases being programmed into that system and the way it's thinking and learning? So I think we've seen a lot of discussion, I think, in media around that, and how you can't very easily exclude all biases out of that, but having to at least be aware of it at the programming stage, have it externally audited and checked, to make sure that we're not creating machines that are continuing our biases, and making it even worse.
Yeah, for sure. And this kind of leads into one of your topics for today, Tove, about governance and going beyond the discussions of COP26 from discussion to action. Because I think governments have to understand technology. We have to have training of people in policymaking to understand how it works and how it could be manipulated to cheat and
Yeah.
not be honest, and to keep that kind of oversight point of view of technology. I'm not sure if they talked about that in this after COP26 conference. Do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, certainly. So this is a panel discussion that I moderated yesterday for the BCCJ. And we were looking at, we had three panelists. We had Alistair Dormer, who is the executive director, I think, and also chief sustainability officer for Hitachi. We had Jennifer Rogers, who's general counsel for Assurion, but also sits, she's one of very few non-Japanese women who sits as an external board director for 3 Japanese companies. And also we had Aragon St. Charles, who's head of ESG for Denton's law firm. So really, each of them brought a very, very different perspective to the discussion. We started off looking at COP26 itself. So Alistair was there at COP. Hitachi was the only major Japanese company to be one of the principal partners at COP, which was disappointing that there weren't more Japanese companies represented there. But he was talking first about the fact that the fact that people were able to finally get together. It was the first major international gathering in 2 years, basically. And he said the atmosphere was incredible, and all of the you had so many different sectors represented. So in previous COPs, it's always been very much a governmental thing with some sort of activist or NPO participation on the fringes. The scientists were kind of, again, at the fringes. He said this felt very different. It was really buzzing. Everyone was excited to be there. You had, indigenous peoples represented. You had sort of all different kinds of industry. And everyone was looking to say, what can we do together? How can we work together on this? So there was a real sense that this is urgent. We need to collaborate to get on with this. So just like the examples we've been talking about, Shirley, with your, team of young scientists, bright young minds working with local government and working with local communities to solve the garbage problem. He said there was very much that sense of, okay, we know what the problems are. We know what we need to do. How do we work together to do this? Which was really positive to hear, because I think there was also a lot of negative sort of media coming out of COP, and they're not doing enough, and the targets weren't ambitious enough. And absolutely, all that's true too. But the fact they were able to gather in person seems to have really galvanized a lot of the corporates, particularly, I think, to step up and say, right, this is, we need to do this now. We can't just sit and wait for the governments to make their policies. So then when we started digging into the questions coming out, sort of looking at regulatory environment, how is that changing in light of the COP, sort of Glasgow Climate Pact and so on. Jennifer was talking about the fact that on boards, certainly in the boards that she sits in, there are not a lot of sustainability experts per se, but everyone is having to suddenly really educate themselves on what does this mean. We can't just sort of say this, we'll delegate that to the sustainability team and they can produce the report, and then we just focus on the profits and the business strategy. There's a real sense of now, no, this is part of the central business strategy, and we all need to understand what this means. We need to understand as a company, how do we build this into our business as usual? So that was encouraging.
Be open to collaborating with experts and open yourself up to kind of transparency a little bit more, and get outside consultants in who really understand it, and use that chance to promote what you think your company is doing well to them. And then they can also help promote what you're doing once they understand how to communicate that. I had a really disappointing reaction from a bunch of companies. I was all gung-ho beginning of this year, reached out by translated letters, offered them to join a free SDG seminar, offered 30 minutes of free consulting, and every single one of them said, no, we got it under control. We don't need any help. And I thought, what a shame that they didn't use that opportunity to sell me on what they're doing. And then I will become a free brand ambassador for them. Like, to keep it secret and not even want to have a free discussion, to learn something new, but also to promote what you're doing. I think it's really short-sighted. So that's a frustration being in Hiroshima. I see so much more movement in Tokyo and the big cities. Come on, Hiroshima, we can do it too. You know, everybody in government, in businesses, from the grassroots levels, we all need to be talking about this. We all need to be collaborating and discussing these issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, very interesting. I mean, the recording of the event will hopefully be out next week. So if anyone's interested, you'll be able to listen to that then. But the overall sense was, this is now that the understanding is there that this needs to be up front and center and taken into sort of daily business conversations. It's no longer something that's at the side and a CSR issue. Aragon St. Charles, his background is in operations, interestingly. He's been a sustainability nerd for a very, very long time. He's a qualified permaculture and aquaponics teacher and published expert on that. But that was always peripheral to, it's completely separate from his role in his previous company as head of operations for Hogan Lovells. But he's now moved into this role where he's global head of ESG for Dentons, which is the largest law firm in the world. And he's reporting directly to the CEO and having those conversations about, this is part of our strategy. This is not something that, we can think about doing. This is a must do. And he gave some very practical ideas on how they've been sort of engaging with different parts of the organization, and also, talking to external experts and partners, like you said, to get things moving on that.
So there's one other topic I want to fit in before we talk about books. Tove, you had mentioned about the wind turbine wall. Yes. And this is very closely related to the discussion I had about Earthship just this week with a woman who has Japan and Asia's first Earthship, which is building design reusing waste materials.
Fantastic.
Like tires. And I did some deep dive into tire and problems and plastic pollution, and how tires are linked to a lot of the microplastic problems we're having. There's no way to reuse or recycle tires. Most of it is landfilled or burned. So they're using tires, filling it with dirt and putting that around the house they're building as a really amazing insulation. And then your idea of making the walls into functional energy creating ideas as well in the design. There's so much we can do with new building design.
Yeah,
And even
absolutely.
some of these ideas, I think we can add to existing buildings too, right?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm in Tokyo today. I'm in a hotel. I came here for business yesterday, and I'm looking out across the city. As far as you can see, there are buildings almost all flat roofed and no greenery anywhere. No, I can't see any solar panels. I can't see anything like that. And you think, what a wasted opportunity. We can be building these things into the design, or even existing buildings here. We could, we've got all this flat roof space. That's a huge square footage of, available space for renewable energy sources, for growing plants, which will help lower the heat island effect, within the city, and bring temperatures down, and allow
As
wildlife.
well as having your own food source,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So
I
much
talked with
opportunity.
farmers, Chuck and
Yes.
John, last week too, right?
Yeah.
And John gets hotels and stuff started with growing their own
Yeah.
food on their roof, which they have in their restaurant, which is better for branding, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so many plus benefits. Looking at any empty roof, you're like, Mottainai.
Oh,
Why aren't you
completely.
catching rainwater? Why aren't
Yeah.
you using solar panels? Why isn't there at least a garden and green roof up there? Like, really, let's use what we already have, make it
Yeah.
better.
Absolutely. Lots of
Any
scope for
any
innovation.
comments, Shirley? We're just going on.
No, I'm really happy to hear. And yeah, there's so many like new ideas, and I think corporates too should, somehow be able to tap into this. And I
Yeah.
know that yeah, I don't want to plug in my company, but I know that Rockton has an Earth Mall. So
Yes.
I think Tova also supports that. I saw a
Mm.
post about that. So even like starting small, or like if you have an e-commerce business, have a small like section where you sell sustainable products from local businesses,
Yeah.
things like that can also be a small step towards like a big change. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's a big hotel chain in America which on their roof they have gardens, but they also have beehives.
Oh,
So one
nice.
of their products in the hotel is their locally grown honey as
Mm.
well as locally grown organic vegetables. So there's such a great branding opportunity. You're
Yeah.
reducing your energy costs. There's just so many wins connected with those ideas, right?
Absolutely. I think we could do a whole session on this. Maybe an upcoming session we can look at.
Definitely. All right, time for books. Tova, you had a great book to recommend.
So the book I've got this week is Net Positive. This is by Paul Polman and Andrew Winston. Paul Polman, of course, is the former Unilever CEO, and a huge advocate, longtime advocate of sustainability on the corporate side. He's also one of the founding counselors of One Young World. So Shirley and I have seen him up on the stage. I mean, he's an amazing guy. This book is looking at how companies need to be going, not just looking at the minimum and saying, we're hearing lots about net zero. Great. Let's go beyond that. Net positive. If we want to thrive, we need to be going way beyond just doing what's necessary to survive. Thriving is hopefully a much more appealing prospect than just surviving. And the book is really, it uses Unilever and Paul's experience and journey there as a case study, if you like. But it's not glorifying that at all. He's very open about, this is what we tried to do, this is what we didn't do well, and here's what we learned from that, and here's how we're doing things differently because of those learnings. But it really breaks down into the thing I really love about it is he brings people up front and center into this. So yes, he talks a lot about the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which has been very successful and is now in the next iteration is continue to they're looking at how can they double their growth but halve their footprint at the same time. So decoupling their growth from the carbon footprint. So he talks a lot about the structural changes and systems, things they had to change in order to achieve that, but also how important it was to really bring people in the organization along for this journey. And he talks about the fact they started with sort of purpose training, starting at the top with the executives, 3-day really deep dive. They brought outside experts in and said, how do we get our execs to really understand our purpose and bring that into their heart to motivate them and take it into the work they do. And then they then started to cascade that down throughout the organization. I mean, it's a massive organization with hundreds of over 100,000 employees, but they're looking at rolling this out, and I think they're now at sort of 80-90% globally for all their employees who have been through this. So they're really taking the time to make sure everyone in the organization understands, why are we doing this? Why is it important for us? How are we helping solve global problems? And how does my role in whatever department I'm in, at whatever level I'm at, how does it contribute and connect to that? So it's a really fascinating read. I think any business leader should be reading this book. It's brilliant.
So important to have that education, training, and open discussions within your organization, as well as your message out to the public with disclosures and transparency and accountability, right? Well, that is our 30 minutes. We have gone over by 1 minute, but I think we got a lot of great stuff in there. I've put as many links below as I could remember as we were going, but I'll add more as I review. Thank you so much once again, Tove and Shirley. Another great discussion, and see everybody next week. Have a nice holiday in Japan.
Yes. All right.
See
bye,
you.
everybody. Thank you.